Hello, and welcome to the interview at BrainStation 23. I'm glad to have you here today. To start off, could you please introduce yourself? Whatever.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I studied computer science in my undergraduate, and right now I'm working as a software engineer.
Great, Tamid. Let's dive into some technical topics. First, can you explain what a RESTful API is and how it functions?
Okay, so a RESTful API is basically the overall journey is basically we send a request and we get a response back, and for each request we can send specific data through with each request through either their body or parameters, and for each responses we would get a defined response, and we would want to catch that response in the front end so that we can show that to the user.
That's a solid overview of RESTful APIs. Now, can you tell me what the purpose of feature engineering is in machine learning?
Okay, so the purpose of feature engineering is basically to make sure that the data that we use to train our models are useful for the model to learn specific patterns so that it can be used to predict future data. So we would, for example, if you want to predict something related to a person's health, we would need their height and weight. However, with feature engineering, we can use their BMI, which is basically calculated using their height and weight. So we can combine those two features into one specific feature, and we can add more useful features later.
That's an excellent example of feature engineering. Now, let's move on to a practical scenario. Here's a situation. Imagine you are tasked with improving the performance of a machine learning model that you've deployed for predicting customer churn. The model has been yielding subpar results. How would you approach this challenge step by step? That
First of all, we will need to monitor the model's results and why it's yielding subpar results. For example, if a model has overfitted, it's basically going to perform worse with our test dataset than with our training dataset. So what we need is regularization in that scenario. However, it depends on the problem that we are facing regarding our model.
That's a good starting point. Monitoring model performance and identifying the issue is crucial. After diagnosing the problem, what would you consider as trade offs and alternative solutions to improve the model's performance?
For example, in order to use a model for a specific use case, we would want to collect dataset and fine tune the model for that specific use case. If that's not possible, we would want to change the way that we are using the model. For example, we can use RAG based generations for large language models or something else like that.
Those are thoughtful strategies to consider. Now let's touch upon your experience. On your CV, you mentioned working on a multilingual chatbot, the Nichols chatbot. Can you briefly describe your key contributions to that project?
So my contribution in that project was to make sure that the project can handle a large user base. So for example, in order to handle a large user base, we used yeah, different web services such as Amazon's AWS, which can handle a large user base if it's scaled up correctly. So that was one of our main problems or challenges that we faced at first. However, we handled it through those services.
Okay, our time for the interview is up, so I will have to end it. Thank you for your time. Your results will be emailed to you soon. Goodbye.